jadi pahlawan-pahlawan di zaman sekarang ini, khusus di sektor pertambangan. Para pembicara yang terkasih, sore ini kita akan melanjutkan series hall ke webinar Mining Talk dengan tema The Prospect of Mining Sector Amidst Global Economic Security.
So for today, hari ini, we're going to have 4 speakers. Akan ada 4 pembicara mewakili dari pemerintah. Lalu ada juga 2 orang yang mewakili analis pasar. 2 speakers to present from the market analysts, and also we will have 1 speaker from the Coal Mining Association. So we will have I think we will have a very vibrant discussion. Kita akan ada diskusi yang sangat menarik dengan keempat narasumber kita ini hari ini. Ada 4.
Baik, berbicara tentang sektor pertambangan di tengah pandemi COVID-19, seperti sektor lain, sektor pertambangan juga terimbas oleh pandemi ini, baik dari sisi operasional maupun dari sisi pasarnya. Kalau dari sisi operasional, ketika di awal pandemi ini, perusahaan tambang mengalami kesulitan khusus dari mobilisasi alat maupun SDM-nya. Tapi dalam situasi seiring perjalanan waktu, perusahaan tambang sudah bisa melakukan adaptasi terkait dengan situasi pandemi ini. Sementara dari sisi harga juga demikian. Sebenarnya kalau kita lihat pergerakan harga komoditi tambang juga mengalami tekanan di sepanjang sejak Februari sampai sekarang. Misalnya batu bara, sampai September harga mengalami tekanan, baru di Oktober dan November ini ada tanda-tanda menuju ke perbaikan.
Less for gold, kecuali emas mungkin yang justru mengalami tren kenaikan harga pada saat-saat pandemi seperti ini. Oke, mungkin kita akan mulai saja dengan pembicara pertama. We will start with our first speaker for today.
Iya. Untuk pembicara pertama kita akan undang Prof. Irwandi, tapi sebelumnya kami bacakan dulu secara singkat CV beliau. Beliau saat ini menjadi staf khusus Menteri SDM bidang tata kelola pertambangan mineral dan batubara. Prof. Irwandi ini juga merupakan Ketua Indonesia Mining Institute atau IMI. Beliau menyelesaikan pendidikan S1 Teknik Pertambangan dan S2 Teknik Industri dari Institut Teknologi Bandung. Kemudian S3-nya diselesaikan di École des Mines de Nancy, Prancis. Untuk menyingkat waktu, kami persilakan pada Prof. Irwandi untuk menyampaikan paparannya. Dan buat para peserta, jika ingin mengajukan pertanyaan, kami akan persilakan di kolom chat, nanti kita akan bacakan. Dan karena Prof. Irwandi jam 4 lewat mungkin ya Prof ya, nanti akan ada meeting dengan Menteri SDM, mungkin setelah pemaparan kita akan langsung buka dengan sesi tanya jawab. Oke, Prof. Irwandi,
silakan Prof.
Silakan, Prof.
Terima kasih pembawa acara ya, Pak Egen dan partnernya. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Panitia memberikan tugas kepada saya untuk presentasi pada siang hari ini, dan tentunya kepada para speaker yang saya hormati. Pak Scott, I'm sorry, I will speak in bahasa. Ya, Pak David, also ya. Saya kira Pak David orang Indonesia ya. Saya akan mulai dengan share screen, bisa ya?
Bisa Pak.
Okay.
Bisa.
Oke. Nah, ini saya diberi tugas ini ya dengan judul ini, yaitu kebijakan terbaru dan capaian kinerja sektor tambang Indonesia. Nah, jadi kita mulai dengan kira-kira bagaimana sih setelah Undang-Undang Nomor 3 ini terbit, bagaimana dengan rancangan peraturan pemerintah yang jumlahnya 3, sampai di mana kemajuannya. Yang kedua, kira-kira bagaimana kinerja yang sudah dicapai oleh sektor pertambangan. Kemudian ada pertumbuhan industri konsumsi batu bara nasional, kemudian progres pembangunan smelter di Indonesia, kemudian bagaimana strategi sektor minerba dalam rangka pemulihan ekonomi nasional, dan terakhir, kira-kira bagaimana prospek komoditas tambang nasional di tengah lesunya perekonomian global. Bapak dan Ibu yang saya hormati, apakah suara saya ini cukup jelas, Bapak dan Ibu moderator?
Jelas, Prof.
Jelas, Prof.
Ya. Nah, jadi ini nomor 1 ya, ini nomor 1 harusnya, perkembangan rancangan peraturan pemerintah. Jadi setelah terbitnya undang-undang ini, ada 3 rancangan peraturan pemerintah yang sedang disusun. Yang pertama, rancangan peraturan pemerintah tentang pelaksanaan kegiatan usaha pertambangan. Yang kedua, rancangan peraturan pemerintah tentang wilayah pertambangan. Dan yang ketiga, rancangan peraturan pemerintah tentang pembinaan dan pengawasan serta reklamasi dan pasca tambang dalam penyelenggaraan pengelolaan usaha pertambangan. Jadi pokok penting dalam peraturan ini adalah kewenangan penerbitan izin, pengaturan luas wilayah UP, perpanjangan kontrak karya PKP2B menjadi UPK, dan kebijakan nilai tambah mineral dan batu bara. Bapak dan Ibu sekalian, yang pertama mengenai rancangan peraturan pemerintah tentang pelaksanaan kegiatan usaha pertambangan, ya ketiga-tiganya ini harus selesai dalam 1 tahun sejak terbitnya undang-undang. Itu yang nomor 1 ini sudah selesai dalam tahap harmonisasi. Ya, jadi mungkin sebentar lagi yang tadinya direncanakan akhir Oktober ya. Yang nomor 2 dan nomor 3 sedang berjalan dan menunggu ada satu istilah tentang izin dari Bapak Presiden ya. Itu yang sedang terjadi, tapi semuanya sedang berjalan. Nah, inilah kira-kira yang perkembangannya ya, dan rencananya seperti ini. Tetapi kalau melihat kepada proses ini, mungkin yang nomor 1 akan terbit segera, tetapi nomor 2 dan 3 itu menunggu proses selanjutnya karena masih ada waktu sebenarnya sampai dengan 1 tahun setelah undang-undang. Tetapi Bapak Menteri SDM menargetkan itu dalam 6 bulan. Ya, itu perkembangan terakhir. Kedua, ini capaian kinerja sektor pertambangan Indonesia. Ya, kalau kita lihat penerimaan negara sektor mineral dan batu bara itu targetnya setelah koreksi ya, karena adanya pandemi COVID-19 itu menjadi 31 triliun. Ya, 31 tadinya di atas 40 triliun ya, jadi ada koreksi 20%. Ya. Kemudian pencapaiannya sampai dengan bulan Oktober itu sudah mendekati 27 triliun. Dan pada bulan November yang terakhir ini sudah lebih dari 28 triliun. Jadi kemungkinan tercapai sesuai dengan target yang sudah dikoreksi. Ya. Yang kedua, mengenai investasi ini sebesar 7 miliar dolar, ya 7,7 miliar dolar. Dan pada tahun 2019 itu sebenarnya dari target 6,2 miliar ya juta ya US dollar ya 6,2 miliar US dollar itu tercapai lebih ya, jadi 105% dengan perincian pencapaian di sektor ini persentasenya ada di sini. Baik itu izin usaha jasa pertambangan 30%, prasarana dan mesin 30%, aktiva tidak berwujud 13%, dan bangunan kapal kendaraan dan alat-alat berat 23%. Ya, di tahun 2020 ini masih pencapaiannya 37%. Ya, masih jauh lah ya dari target yang 2020. Ini tentunya pengaruh terbesar akibat beberapa proyek terhenti karena COVID-19. Kemudian untuk pemanfaatan batu bara domestik yang tadinya direncanakan 155 juta ton, itu baru terrealisasi di bulan Oktober itu 97 juta ton. Nah, ini tentunya ada penurunan karena sebagian besar dari penurunan itu nanti kita akan lihat dari PLTU ya, karena konsumsi listrik menurun karena COVID-19. Nah, jadi peningkatan nilai tambah mineral sendiri, pembangunan smelternya itu hingga Oktober 2020 itu total unit smelter yang telah dibangun 17. Ya. Nah, ini adalah instruksi dari Bapak Presiden untuk menggalakkan yang namanya hilirisasi baik di mineral maupun di batu bara agar bisa mendorong multiplier efek ekonomi dan kesejahteraan rakyat. Nah, sedangkan reklamasi bekas tambang targetnya sekitar hampir 8.000 ya, 7.000 targetnya di 2020 dan baru tercapai kira-kira 4.000-an ya. Nah, ini juga tidak mudah, ini harus kita usaha keras ya, karena bagaimanapun di dalam Undang-Undang Nomor 3, mereka yang tidak memenuhi reklamasi itu akan mendapatkan denda yang besar sekali ya. Nah, ini. Sedangkan yang keempat ini mengenai pertumbuhan industri konsumsi batu bara nasional. Jadi kira-kira kalau kita lihat itu di 2019 ini 138 juta ton, kemudian di 2020 itu kira-kira 155 ya. Nah, di 2019 ini warnanya lebih banyak. Artinya industri yang menyerap batu bara itu berkembang ya. Kemudian dia nanti kita lihat akan sedikit turun ya. Nah, ini konsumsi yang warna-warna ini ada PLTU, ada pabrik kertas, metalurgi, ya pupuk, briket, ya pupuk termasuk tekstil ya, lainnya ya. Dan ada industri belum teridentifikasi. Nah, jadi kalau kita lihat ini targetnya 155 tahun ini baru 97 dan ini kira-kira yang akan diserap sesuai dengan industri tadi ya. Kemudian kalau kita lihat pencapaian dari tiap industri itu sangat yang paling PLTU baru 80%. Tetapi briket 500% tumbuh ya, karena beberapa hilirisasi ke briket itu sudah mulai tumbuh tapi jumlahnya masih sedikit sekali. Persentasenya besar tapi jumlahnya sedikit sekali ya. Ini dalam juta ton ya. Jadi kalau 0,05 Anda bisa hitung sendiri ya. Cuma 5% dari 1 juta. Nah, untuk industri yang lain itu berkurang, ya berkurang banyak. Artinya ada dari interpretasi tabel ini kita harus kembali menggalakkan industri-industri ini ya agar bisa menyerap kembali rencana domestic market obligation. Jadi memang kalau kita lihat perkembangan industri kita itu juga agak menurun ya di tahun 2020. Kemudian bagaimana dengan progres pembangunan smelter di Indonesia? Ya, kita targetnya di tahun 2024 itu 48 smelter. Nah, ini sedang banyak yang berhenti ya, karena suplai bahan baku, suplai tenaga kerja itu juga berhenti karena beberapa negara yang mempunyai teknologi ini lagi lockdown. Ya. Kemudian juga mulai tumbuh lagi, tetapi belum signifikan ya. Dan diharapkan total ini ya ini adalah perinciannya ya. Jumlah smelter nikel, bauksit, besi, tembaga, mangan, timbal seng ini totalnya ya, total investasinya dan kemudian realisasinya sampai dengan Juli 2020 ya. Kalau kita lihat di sini cukup baik kecuali untuk tembaga. Ya, tembaga itu agak rendah ya. Ini realisasi untuk investasinya. Kalau kita lihat di sini. Bapak dan Ibu sekalian, ya, kalau kita lihat ini persebarannya seperti ini di seluruh Indonesia, ya. Ya, ini adalah data terakhir ya mengenai persebaran dari smelter di seluruh Indonesia. Ya, kemudian nanti kita lihat di situ ada perkembangan pembangunannya dalam persen ya. Nah, sekarang ini bagaimana kita melakukan suatu terobosan untuk memperbesar daripada kegunaan dari industri ini baik untuk pendapatan negara maupun untuk kesejahteraan rakyat ya. Ini yang paling penting. Nah, kemudian bagaimana sih strategi sektor minerba dalam rangka pemulihan ekonomi nasional? Inilah beberapa upaya kami. Ya, satu, ini tentunya kontribusi SDM yang bertanggung jawab dan berkelanjutan. Ini kira-kira usaha-usahanya, ya, mulai dari dana UMKM sampai peningkatan produk dalam negeri, ya. Kemudian untuk ketahanan energi, hilirisasi batubara, DMO batubara, jaringan gas, mandatori biodiesel dan solar cell pada lahan bekas tambang. Kemudian untuk optimalisasi dari pendapatan negara, ini sore ini jam 4 ini sudah akan ada rapat ya. Jadi kalau ada tanya jawab dengan saya barangkali bisa diundur ke setelah pembicara semuanya sehingga saya bisa masuk lagi. Karena jam 4 ini saya mohon izin karena ada rapat dengan Kementerian SDM, Kementerian Keuangan, dan Kementerian BUMN. Nah ini yang bagian terakhir, ini prospek ke komoditas kita. Ya, ini kira-kira bagaimana mengatasi COVID-19, meningkatkan pemanfaatan mineral dan batu bara, memberikan stimulus, kuasi fiskal, kuasi non-fiskal, membuat kebijakan yang konsisten dan terstruktur dengan baik untuk mengurangi dampak permintaan batu bara yang turun akibat COVID-19. Ya, Indonesia, pemerintah Indonesia bersama Asosiasi Pertambangan Batu Bara sudah dan terus mengintensifkan kegiatan diplomasi dengan mitra dagang melalui forum-forum webinar. Dan kemudian juga mengintensifkan koordinasi lintas sektor dan fasilitasi penyelesaian kendala dalam melakukan pendekatan dengan mitra dagang dalam rangka memacu investasi. Nah ini intensif dari eksplorasi sangat diperlukan, ya, sangat diperlukan. Identifikasi kami terhadap komoditas yang signifikan sudah dilakukan. Bagaimana caranya mendorong ini supaya meningkat lebih pesat. Kemudian digitalisasi pertambangan ini lagi akan dievaluasi untuk diperbaiki dan ditingkatkan kualitasnya. Target pengembangan industri dari Departemen Perindustrian ya, kita tidak bisa lepas dari ini. Kemudian itu yang terakhir ya, yang bisa kami sampaikan. Tetapi dalam hal ini memang banyak hal-hal yang perlu kita optimalkan dengan baik sehingga grand strategi untuk komoditas pertambangan Indonesia kita bisa susun untuk meningkatkan, mengoptimalkan semua komoditas tambang untuk kepentingan negara. Terima kasih, selamat sore, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Saya kembalikan kepada moderator.
Waalaikumsalam, Prof. Irwandi. Terima kasih untuk paparannya.
Kembali diingatkan untuk para peserta yang memiliki pertanyaan yang diajukan kepada Prof. Irwandi agar bisa diajukan karena kita akan langsung masuk.
Jangan langsung Bu. Saya mau masuk ke rapat sekarang. Kalau bisa di akhir aja. Ya.
Oh gitu. Oke, baik.
Berarti nanti Prof masih bisa gabung lagi, Prof.
Ya. Oke, baik. Terima kasih banyak, Prof.
Baik.
Jadi ditunda terlebih dahulu. Pertanyaan kami sudah ada beberapa pertanyaan yang masuk untuk Prof. Irwandi, jadi nanti akan dijawab. Kemudian kita akan lanjut.
Kita akan lanjut ke pembicara kedua dan ketiga dari IHS Markit.
Okay, so our next speaker is a joint speaker from the IHS Markit Asia. So there is Mr. Scott Dendy and there's Mr. James Stevenson. So I will introduce Mr. James Stevenson. He is the Senior Director for Coal, Metals, and Mining at the IHS Markit Global Research Lead for Coal, Metals, and Mining. And Mr. Stevenson ini adalah Direktur Senior dan Pimpinan Riset untuk Batubara, Logam, dan Pertambangan di IHS Markit. Sebelumnya dia memimpin untuk analisis batubara global dan juga untuk batubara di regional atau kawasan Amerika Utara. Keahlian Mr. Stevenson meliputi dinamika penawaran dan permintaan pasar batubara termal, metalurgi di region Amerika Utara dan juga secara internasional. Beliau juga menguasai untuk perkiraan harga batubara, penambangan batubara, untuk biaya transportasi dan logistik, serta infrastruktur ekspor batubara. Mr. Stevenson memiliki gelar sarjana dan master dari University of Sydney di Australia dan PhD dari Yale University. Kemudian beliau akan berbicara bersama dengan rekannya yaitu Mr. Scott Dandy. Mr. Scott Dandy is the lead for Coal Index and Business Development Operations in Asia for IHS Markit, and he is based in Singapore. So he has been in the business for 17 years. Dia sudah ada 17 tahun pengalaman dan meliputi pasar perdagangan terkait energi. And Mr. Dandy here has the Magister of History from the University of Leeds in England, and also I guess that's it. So, that's what I have, and then you can also introduce yourself furthermore. We can know our speakers better, and they will speak. Yeah, they will speak as the market analyst, and we'd like Mr. Scott Dandy to give the presentation, please, Scott.
Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon, Scott.
It's actually James's presentation that will be.
This?
James, yes, there's only one.
Okay.
It's just the James's presentation, but we'll both contribute to that.
Okay.
Did you, our videos are locked, I think. I'll go ahead. I think our videos are locked.
Okay, so our viewers in Indonesia here, mostly they can understand English, but later on, if there's someone who would like to pose a question in Bahasa Indonesia, we will translate it. So, presentasi akan disampaikan dalam bahasa Inggris, tapi saya yakin Bapak dan Ibu akan mengerti. Tapi kalau misalnya ada pertanyaan, nanti kami akan bantu sampaikan untuk diterjemahkan ke dalam bahasa Inggris. So, please, Scott and James.
Well, thank you very much, everybody. Shall I share my screen?
Yeah, I think if you can.
Okay, can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Terrific. And I wish my Bahasa was a tenth as good as I'm sure everybody in the audience is English. But please do feel free to reach out and ask questions any time if any of this isn't clear. So Scott and I are going to talk a little bit about the current situation in the coal markets. We're particularly going to have a bit of a look at what we're seeing for 2021 now that we are into November in what's obviously been a very tumultuous year. And then I have a few slides here on the next 10 years as well, but really kind of focusing on the remnants of 2020 and into 2021. Key takeaways, if you just take a few things from this presentation, I think obviously COVID-19, very bad for thermal coal demand. We expect to lose about 83 million tons of import demand. On top of that, there's huge uncertainty around what China is going to do for the rest of the year, particularly given port restrictions. Indonesia will benefit a little bit, we think, from the current Australia-China issues. And we now expect exports from Indonesia to be only, quote unquote, down about 30 million tons. As our forecasts have evolved under COVID-19, we've had forecasts of in the high 30s and 40s at times. So this is a little bit of improvement. Again, a lot of this depends on what China does for the rest of the year. And later on, I'll get Scott to chip in with his thoughts on the import restrictions. The good news is at IHS Markit, we look at mines around the world and companies that produce coal, and we are seeing in the market roughly the amount of supply cuts that are needed. We believe have already occurred or are kind of locked in through the balance of the year. So yes, we're losing about 83 million tons of thermal coal, but we think that we already have cuts to roughly match that. So, I would summarize that by saying I think we are past the bottom, and I think the recent strength in prices shows that. I think the bottom was probably 3 months ago. 2021 demand will improve. It's not going to be as much of an improvement as 2020 was a loss. Indonesia will get back quite a bit of the export tonnage that it has lost this year, but it won't get all of that back, at least in 2021. Metallurgical coal, I'm focusing on thermal in this presentation, but I do have a slide or two on met. We think met coal is about 40 million tons of demand, and it'll get most of that back in 2021. Longer term, we do think that peak seaborne trade for thermal coal has passed. If COVID hadn't happened, I wouldn't have been saying that, but we think that 2019, people will look back and see that that was the peak year for seaborne thermal coal trade. And similarly, we don't think that Indonesian exports will return to 2019 levels, but they certainly will bounce back strongly in 2021, and they'll be strong through the 2020s. They just won't be at that kind of 450 to 453 million ton level. Now, a little bit of detail, and I'm sure many people in the audience have seen some of these graphs before, and I've made a point of adding some new ones because I know I've definitely presented to Indonesian audience a number of times, as has Scott, in this kind of crazy year. Like I said, we expect about 80 million tons of demand loss this year. And if you look at you can see details on which countries. It's predominantly the biggest downsides are Europe and India. China, a big uncertainty, and we've recently revised that down based on the ongoing tightness in port restrictions and the additional focus on Australia. The good news, like I said, is that we look at each mine, we look at changes in guidance targets, we look at actual statistics as they come in, and we really see that for most countries, the cuts we see in the market are about where we think they're big enough to offset lost demand. And that really points to a market that is, I think before the China news tightened with what's happened with Australia, the Australia-China relationship, until that happened, I think we were definitely looking at a balanced market where we needed to reduce some inventories in some places, but we were definitely, looking at stronger pricing. That's in a little bit of a bit of a hiatus, a bit of a uncertain period. But fundamentally, while we wait on figuring out exactly what China will do in the last few months of the year and into 2021, I think upside is coming. And certainly we have sufficient, in our view, we have sufficient cuts, certainly out of Indonesia. Maybe we need a little bit more out of Australia. We do have a little bit of a gap between where we think Australian exports need to be and where cuts are kind of pointing now. I think for the most part, most countries have reached sufficient cuts to balance this market. Obviously, this has been very painful for prices, and in each of these charts here, we have Indonesian prices in the bottom left. That's 42 GAR and 5,000 GAR, our M42 and M50 indices. And then Australian prices in the top right, and then some Atlantic, Richards Bay 5500 mainly going to Indian industrial sector these days, and the old sort of API2 index in the bottom right. In each of these cases, you can see, the big fundamental thing is we are still in very low pricing, and current price levels are not sustainable. And in the next year or two, they need to rise dramatically. And our expectation is that they will. And I don't think that's a particularly contentious expectation. The near-term positive is that we have seen some strength in pricing, particularly in Indonesia. If you look in the bottom left, we've had some strength really in the last 3-4 weeks, rising off the bottom. And also in South African prices, we've had some return to strength there. Really, that started at the end of the Indian monsoon when industrial buying really resumed. Much weaker Newcastle 5500 high ash, which was showing some signs of life until the restrictions on Australian coal imports really kicked in, and there was a clear signal that Australian coal was going to struggle into China for a little while. I think that's a handy time maybe to hand over to you, Scott, and just to hear a little bit more about the import restrictions and kind of near-term market stuff.
Yeah, thanks, James. So my job is mainly covering the markets. James does the, big brain stuff, and I just talk to traders and buyers and producers and find out what they're seeing. So it's been a tough year for volatility, really. I mean, we knew it was a weak price, but we've had little sort of weeks where there's a bit of tightness and then it falls away and it kind of comes and goes. But we are definitely now seeing a position where the market, as James said, is getting tighter. The cuts that needed to be made have been made. They're already in the system. And it's really just a question of time until demand kind of overtakes where the inventories were high, will be overtaken, and then there'll be genuine tightness, we think. So it's a question of when that bite happens. It's being very much harder to observe due to the situation in China. If you just let the market to pure supply and demand, I think Chinese demand for international coal will be stronger. I think the problem we have at the moment is no one's particularly clear on what the target is for this year. So by our estimates, there's either 12 million tons a month left to go or 24 million tons a month left to go before either a kind of 277, 280 target for Chinese imports is breached, or whether it's last year's target of 300 or last year's imports levels of 300 million tons. So without that kind of clarity, it's very hard for people to plan. And even the Chinese traders themselves don't really know. Over the last few days, there's been a lot of talk about it being a tighter target for this year. But we're getting to the point where even if it is at the 277 level, it will detract what goes into the end of the year is actually clear, but it might not change trading so much because there's a bit of demurrage is being baked in to get into next year. So I think the real critical piece of information of which is still not clear, as most of this is with how China is going to operate its customs, is whether they have a similar system to this year where it's quarterly, half-yearly targets, or whether they roll to something that's a bit more of a monthly target to control imports. So at the moment, there's a little bit of an optimism. Literally today, I've been talking to some buyers in China or traders in China, and they're anticipating a bit more activity. There's been some tenders recently from some of the large power groups, and this is stimulating a little bit of interest again. Now, interestingly, most of the cargoes that we're hearing about now are in the hands of traders. Miners themselves seem to be fairly well balanced, and they don't have much spot tons to put into the market till the end of the year. So it's what's already been committed. So if demand does start to spike, we're not anticipating that there is a lot of spot tons in this market right now until the end of the year. So depending on how demand plays, we are seeing a bit of an improvement out of Indian industrial demand, and so we're expecting possibly a bit of a return to the market from India. So if you put that together with a more positive outlook from China, especially without the Australian high ash going in, there'll be an increased interest in finding Indonesian and Russian material. Now, we know that Russian material is also tight for the end of the year. So as far as the spot market is concerned, we are, we are looking at what could be a bit of an improvement in prices between here and the end of the year. Now, it all depends on what China does. If China decides it's going to take a very hard line on imports, then there might be a few more cargoes kicking around than the market can absorb. But if there is, a good flow into China, then, there isn't, as we're saying, we don't see that there is an awful lot of cargoes still in that spot market. I think one of the features this year and the last few years, really, probably since 2016, the recovery there has very much been that the market is very much focused on the spot, and it's very hard to do long-term contracting to smooth that out. Certainly not on a fixed price basis, which would have been, you'd settle a contract for 1 or 2 years at a certain fixed price. I mean, that's almost impossible these days. So what we have is a lot of volatility in the spot market. So, depending on the week, how much is happening, there's either a big tug on prices and it's getting well supported, or if there aren't those big tenders out there, then it can look like there's a lot of coal in the market and everyone's tried to sell and worrying about where the price is going. So it does seem to be, in the time I've been doing this, which is, I've been out in Singapore for 10 years following coal prices, and this is as volatile as it's ever been, for prices moving up quickly, down quickly, changing direction, good weeks, bad weeks. So the volatility's definitely increased. It doesn't look like that's getting any better. So one of the things is that we are looking more at spot markets and indices trades. So that volatility is not going to help, but it's kind of a self-fulfilling kind of cycle, really, where the more volatile it gets, the harder it is to do long-term contracts, so the more that has to go into that spot market. But yeah, I think till the end of the year, I agree with James that we've probably bottomed out, and there's probably more upside risk than downside risk.
Yeah, no, thanks, Scott. Great comments as always. We'll have a couple more kind of near-term slides, and mate, feel free to chip in anytime you see something interesting. I think for Indonesian coal in particular, I think Scott has highlighted on one thing, which is that spot availability is probably tight if demand does tick up. Okay, and we are coming into some potential upside risks. Of course, it's approaching winter, Northern Hemisphere winter. Inventories in the north of China have not been strong, and there's some risks around those. We have La Nina, which means the threat of supply interruption in Australia, and that's more of a met coal story, but certainly still impacts thermal coal. And I think along with that kind of near-term tightness, I think there's a sense that Indonesia will benefit from the quota reset. Now that's something that certainly could benefit Russia as well, maybe to a lesser extent South Africa, probably much less South Africa, but certainly Russia and Indonesia stand to benefit. There's a lot of risk to Australia being able to participate when that quota reset does happen. We've certainly had some reports of stronger buying of Indonesian coal. Here's a chart from our Commodities at Sea platform, which tracks vessel movements, and I draw your attention to the little columns on the far right. Now, the darker sort of medium blue is vessels that have left Indonesia, and this is all destinations, but predominantly this is China, India, other parts of Southeast Asia. You can see in the in-transit vessels, ones that have left Indonesia but have not arrived at their destination, there appears to be some strength there. Now, I would just warn, there are vessels waiting off the coast of China, and those are included. So partly you're catching, some of those cues, but certainly, there do seem to be some statistics indicating stronger buying, particularly for Indonesian coal, after some relatively weak months since around, sort of later Q2. Look, with that, I'm going to turn over to 2021, which I think in November, obviously very looming at the front of people's minds. And just to remind, we expect a loss of about 83 million tons of thermal coal this year. Next year, we expect to get back 46 million. Right now, I sort of pause here. Part of me looks at 46 million and thinks, well, that's nothing near the 83 that we've lost, which is, I guess, the glass half empty view. The other view, though, is that 46 million tons of extra demand is massive, and any other year that would, of course, be, incredibly bullish. We do, I think we're already seeing that in the market. We've seen stronger buying from a lot of end user countries, China and what's going on there, obviously, sticking out and are a market unto themselves, but certainly much stronger buying out of India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, the Northern Asian countries, Japan, Korea in particular, buying has been strong. And that's been true for met coal as well. So really general strengthening, more RFPs being put out. So I think we are, setting up a stronger 2021 already, and we'll start seeing some of those stronger numbers in Q4. A little bit of detail though, why are we only getting 46 million back? A huge part of the story is Europe. Now, Europe was always going to be having a downward trend from, really the last decade. It is going to have an uptick next year, which is really only a function of the fact that it lost 30 million tons of demand this year. I think coming into COVID, our expectation had been maybe 15 lost out of Europe. There are certainly some risks around that European number. The reason we don't have a bigger bounce back is in part because there are strong gas prices in Europe. And actually, strong gas prices are looming as potentially a very meaningful narrative globally in 2021, owing to ongoing relatively weak oil prices and lower associated gas production out of the United States and elsewhere, meaning less gas, meaning stronger prices for LNG and stronger prices for landed gas. So Europe was always going to be down, and Europe will not recover anywhere near the 30 million of demand it's losing this year. It's worth noting, Japan, we think, will recover some of its lost demand, as will South Korea. But in general, those countries have been, undergoing some level of movement away from coal, somewhat offset this year in Japan by stronger nuclear generation, weaker nuclear generation requiring more coal demand. But generally, a gentle downward slope in demand over coming years. So yes, they'll get some demand back, but it won't offset losses this year. The real big one worth noting, though, is India. India, we think, loses about 30 million tons of demand this year. We've actually raised that recently. But we think that Coal India will steal some market share from the international market from 2021. Essentially, Coal India has been able to grow its production capacity while demand has been weaker in India. And then next year, even though demand will come back, we think Coal India can take a little bit of market share. And that's going to hurt Indonesian coal. And it probably hurts Indonesian coal to the tune of perhaps 15 million tons a year over the next few years. And then just looking at the chart on the right shows the same things, but it just gives you a little bit of detail on exactly where the extra demand will come. The left half of that chart is showing the losses in 2020, and the right half of that chart shows growth in 2021. So you can see we do have a big correction, but we're not going to get back to pre-COVID-19 levels, at least in 2021. I'll look very quickly on long term. Like I said, we think seaborne trade has peaked and 2019 will be remembered as the peak of it. We're going to remain essentially flat from current levels. You can see here a breakout by different qualities. You can see that a lot of the demand losses in the higher CVs, which is where most of the Atlantic buyers are, and there's a big European story there. We do, however, expect some influx of Russian coal into APAC, and that will pressure Indonesian and Australian coal to some degree, and we'll be pushing some higher CV coal into APAC. But generally, a fairly flat outlook for the next 10 years, and a decline thereafter. If I showed this out to 2035, you would see a distinct decline in seaborne thermal coal. A couple of comments around metallurgical coal. I won't go into a lot of detail here. We can just kind of wrap this up. We do expect about 40 million tons of lost metallurgical coal demand, but we get, I think, maybe 43 million tons lost. We get back about 36, 37 next year. So a solid macroeconomic recovery. All of this predicated on, vaccine for COVID kicking in at some point in 2021, and not having, third or fourth waves of the coronavirus. But yeah, and definitely, strength. Again, with met coal, I think we're poised for stronger pricing. We're just kind of waiting on what China does, because again, we have cut enough supply to match with weaker 2019 demand levels. So as demand comes back, it'll be interesting to see how quickly supply can react to the upside.
Okay, so I would like to remind you guys, you have like 2 minutes to wrap up the presentation, please.
Okay, no problem at all.
Okay.
Worth noting, just on the met coal side, with China restricting Australian coal, it is turning its back on the cheapest hard coking coal in the world. Dark blue in this cost curve is Australian coal. So it will be interesting to see how long these import restrictions go for. Certainly for thermal coal, China can live without Australian coal, for quite a while if it's prepared to pay more. For coking coal, it's going to need to pay substantially more, and we're starting to see that in some of the deals done for Canadian coal, for example. And it really is going to need coking coal, full stop. At some point. I don't think China can really turn its back on Australian coal. And then we do, where we have a flat outlook for thermal coal demand, we do have a rising outlook for met coal demand over the next 10 years. And then just look, price forecasts, a little bit of detail on M42 and Indonesian 3/8 GAR on the right. I make the point, the current prices that we have this year are not sustainable. We do need substantial strengthening into 2021. I think 2021 there might still be challenges that keep prices down, but certainly by 2022 we'll be back to kind of mid-30s M42 and equivalent prices elsewhere around the world. And with that, I'll wrap things up and turn back to the hosts.
Okay, thank you very much, Scott and James. Okay. Our next speaker from the Association of Indonesian Coal Mining, maybe you have like optimism hearing from our two speakers that although the current prices are not sustainable, but Indonesia will somewhat still benefit from the Australia and China issues, and the export will be strong throughout the remaining years. I don't know if our next speaker have anything else to say or whether he will agree with this. So we will continue to our next speaker.
Oke, kita lanjutkan ke pembicara yang keempat dari Asosiasi APBI, Asosiasi Pertambangan Batubara Indonesia, Direktur Eksekutif Pak Hendra Sinadia. Selamat sore, Pak Hendra. Selamat sore, Pak Ejen. Kayaknya cerah nih ya mendengar presentasi dari IHS Markit ini, kayaknya ada optimisme nih.
Atau belum tentu, atau ada pendapat berbeda mungkin.
Nah, silakan Pak Hendra presentasinya. Tapi sebelumnya mungkin saya ingin perkenalkan Pak Hendra sedikit. Hendra Sinadia menjadi Direktur Eksekutif APBI sejak tahun 2017. Beliau hampir 15 tahun berkecimpung di dunia pertambangan baik mineral maupun batu bara. Memulai karir di pertambangan itu sejak 2002 sampai 2008 itu di PT Freeport Indonesia. Hendra menyelesaikan pendidikan di Fakultas Hukum Universitas Hasanuddin, Makassar, dan Master of Business Administration di West Coast University, California. Silakan Pak Hendra.
Ya. Oke, terima kasih banyak Majalah Tambang Pamerindo telah mengundang kami. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I see my friends here, Pak Scott and James, from IHS Markit. Nice seeing you again. We've been in the same panel for a few events already. So nice seeing you. I saw your presentations. Sorry for being late in joining this event because I have another event before that. Oke, mungkin I deliver this in bahasa Indonesia, mungkin separuh-separuh saja ya, Bu ya.
Yeah.
Oke, tadi saya sama pandangan, I have the same optimism with our friends from IHS Markit and looking at the future of the coal industry in Indonesia and sort of global. We can see on the current trend prices, it's a little bit increase, So I try to cover ada 5 isu yang ditanyakan, yang dimintakan oleh panitia dan this is the topic that chosen by the committee, opportunity and challenges in the coal domestic market. Okay, talking about optimism, we can see the prospect of the export market for Indonesia, and I'd like to inform you that currently Indonesian government and Chinese governments in the discussion on how to boost the Indonesian export to China, and there will be a meeting, G2G high-level meeting in the next couple of weeks in Nanning, China, and we are from Indonesian Coal Mining Association also supporting this initiative. And last year, our association has signed an MOU with China Coal Distribution and Transportation Associations, and this association will be part of the joint cooperation between Indonesian government and the Chinese governments in the very soon. So it's going on now. So we still have optimism that Indonesian coal export to Australia will be having a positive outlook in the future. Okay, mengenai other markets, other potential export market, the committee has asked me to raise this issue also. I think Southeast Asian, in the maybe not in the near future, but I believe in the next 5 years or so, a potential market from Southeast Asian country will be positive. There will be some decline on the initial compared to initial projections on the coal consumptions in Southeast Asia for the next 5-10 years beyond, but the South Asian market will be very dynamic in the future, especially for the coal-fired power plant development. And if we combine our export to Southeast Asian countries, especially to Malaysia, Vietnam, the Philippines, Thailand, or also in Myanmar, Brunei, and so on, it consists of 21% of the Indonesian total coal export. So if we combine all the Southeast Asian countries into a single market, now in the Southeast Asian market is the rank number 3 after China, India, and after China and India, and Southeast Asian market even bigger combined if we combine compared to the South Korea, Taiwan, and Japan. So we have a very positive view on the Southeast Asian market. Now, talking about domestic markets, I don't need to go through to the slides, because you may have seen other slide before, Okay, coal domestic market ada di beberapa slide tadi. think there is some increase if you look at the trend, yeah, and the significant increase, mostly in the smelter, yeah, the refining, processing and refining for nickel downstream, especially. So the increase from 2018 to 2019 is almost 100%, yeah, increase, and in the 2018 to 2019, it's around 50%. And after the pandemic, maybe in the 2021 or beyond, the consumption of the coal from smelter industry will be higher. So domestic demand, of course, will increase, but in the next 3 or 5 years, I think exports still play the bigger role. So maybe the percentage will be 75% or maybe 78 and 80% of Indonesian coal productions. And also we have optimism in the coal downstreaming investment. Yeah, we have seen our president Pak Jokowi has issued a very robust statement urging Indonesians to move forward to develop or transform coal industry from being producing thermal coal, but also to exploring opportunities in coal downstreaming. Yeah? So now the government has issued some fiscal and non-fiscal incentives in the form of the regulations. Non-fiscal incentive, the government has issued mining law, new mining law number 3, 2020. Yeah? There are a couple of provisions that provide the certainty for coal downstreaming. Yeah? First is the extension, jaminan extension of the CCOW, and also the incentive for CCOW if it invested in the integrated coal downstreaming project, which is the permit or license will be extended for another 10 years or more. Yeah? So there is a positive incentive indeed. And on the fiscal incentive, the law number 11/2020, job creation law, yeah, Undang-Undang Omnibus Law, also there is a provision that gives the facilities incentive 0% of the coal downstreaming industry. So coal produced to be used for coal downstreaming will enjoy the benefit 0% tax royalty. Of course, the incentive it's not sufficient because the coal downstreaming investment it requires huge investment and very long term. And then we need full support, yeah, some other fiscal and non-fiscal incentive. We need some certainty also, of course, on the regulatory framework, yeah, to guarantee the certainty of the long-term investment. Yeah. Also, the off-taker, we need the support from the government to at least give us or find, the suitable off-taker. And also we need the clarity and certainty on the selling price, yeah, for DME or automethanol and others coal downstreaming products. So this is a very huge challenge, yeah, but with the strong commitment from the government and also the cooperation from the industry, I believe they will workable in the future. But government and the industry should sit down together to work out on the very comprehensive roadmap, yeah, to cover for the next 20 or 30 years. And in doing so, I also suggest to the government to also explore the potential of export, yeah, because we still have a opportunity for export, even though in the next 10 or 20 years, the coal consumption from Indonesian traditional coal importers like China and even India will gradually decrease their coal import. Yeah? But there will be still opportunity in region that I mentioned before, the Southeast Asians, and also probably some development, positive development in South Asian countries. Yeah, so export we still need to take the advantage of the potential market in the future, even though it's will be gradually decline. On the other hand, we need to boost the domestic consumption, yeah, and we hope the industry will be in the recovery mode in the next years after the pandemic has gradually settled down, yeah, with the arrival of the vaccine, we hope, and with the incentive given, so industry will be in the recovery. So 2020, the year 2020 has been very, very important for Indonesian mining industry, particularly coal industry, because the government has passed the new mining law and also the job creation law, and also last couple of weeks, yeah, Indonesian government has finally gave the approval for the extension of the first generation CCW, PT Arutmin, converted becoming IUPK. But now we are still waiting for the implementing regulations to be issued by the governments, the implementing regulation of the mining law, and not only on the business activity, but also on the mining area, and also implementing regulation on reclamation as post mining, and also the implementing regulation on decentralization of the mining authority. In addition to that, we are still waiting for the government regulations on the tax treatment for coal industry. This is something that's very important, and this will determine the economic viability of the coal investment in the future. For your information, this evening, our association, Indonesian Coal Mining Association, will be having a meeting with the Director General of Mineral and Coal. This meeting is initiated by our association. We are going to discuss the tax issues with regard to the coal mining industry. So there will be some interesting, important meeting later in this evening. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to it. And after this conference, I have to prepare some materials to be discussed with the government. So, okay, I think these are my brief presentations that I would like to share to this very important webinar. And if there is any questions later on from the audience, I'll be happy to respond. Thank you very much. Terima kasih banyak Majalah Tambang dan Pak Merindo atas kesempatannya. Thank you.
Baik, terima kasih Pak Hendra untuk paparannya melengkapi paparan-paparan sebelumnya, dan saya yakin bahwa peserta semua benar-benar diperkaya khusus terkait dengan kondisi sektor pertambangan, lebih khusus lagi sektor pertambangan batu bara. Nah, mungkin kita akan langsung ke sesi Q&A. Waktu kita 10 menit untuk Q&A ini. Kita akan bagi dalam dua sesi.
Dua termin.
Ya. Nah, untuk termin pertama mungkin ke masing-masing pembicara kita akan bacakan
pertanyaan yang sudah masuk. Baik. Ya. Yang pertama pertanyaannya adalah kepada Pak Irwandi, pada Prof. Irwandi, ditanyakan oleh Bapak Asep DH, bagaimana tentang rencana transisi energi di sektor pertambangan. Silakan mungkin Prof. Irwandi dijawab terlebih dahulu atau gimana?
Langsung aja ketiga.
Oke. Untuk Profesor Irwandi tentang rencana transisi energi, and then the questions for both James and Scott from Robbie here. From your perspective, what is the fatal point that makes the coal market in Indonesia hard to gain recuperation level compared to other countries? And also, the Indonesian government just enacted a new mining law earlier this year and also the Omnibus Law that is more recently, and both have specific goal, among others, to improve the investment climate. So how is that going to influence the coal market? And pertanyaan terakhir.
Yang ketiga untuk Pak Hendra, ini pemerintah Indonesia benar-benar menaruh perhatian untuk hilirisasi batubara sampai Presiden Joko Widodo sendiri membuat rapat terbatas terkait dengan hilirisasi batubara. Nah, pemerintah juga cukup royal untuk memberikan insentif baik fiskal maupun non fiskal. Nah, kira-kira dari asosiasi dan juga mungkin dari sisi pengusaha terkait dengan kesiapan itu untuk melaksanakan hilirisasi batubara. Lalu yang kedua mungkin soal insentif. Kira-kira dari insentif yang ada apakah sudah cukup atau hal apa lagi yang dibutuhkan? Begitu. Kita mungkin langsung ke Prof. Irwandi, Prof. Soal transisi energi.
Silahkan Prof. Irwandi. Admin mungkin bisa di-unmute. Prof. Irwandi masih mute. Or if
ya mungkin masalah.
Yes. Or
kita masuk ke yang kedua.
The other speaker, Scott and James, are you ready to answer the questions first?
Yeah, we can go ahead. Sure.
Yeah,
Scott,
you
did you
can go
want
ahead.
to comment first?
Well,
yes. Please.
I'm not entirely sure what the detail of the question is on the fatal point for coal Indonesia to gain recuperation level compared to other nation. From my point of view, all of these things are relatively simple. It's always about price and what you're actually selling. I mean, if you look at some grades of Indian coal, goes for higher values than Australian coal into Newcastle. It's all about where you're located, where the buyer is, what the grade is, and what the level of competition's like. So my only issue about, again, on the mining law and what it will do for price, it's all, from my point of view, I'm very simplistic about what I see and what impacts the price level. It's supply and demand and how much there is. And when things are scarce, things go up. And when things are abundant, price goes down. And with Indonesian coal and coal production, it has the capability to produce more than the market needs at times. Especially when the market changes and then suddenly the demand that people predicted to be there isn't there. So, if the mining law has any way or has an impact on stopping or limiting the amount of overproduction at times, then that can be useful. Now, one of the main difference between Indonesia and Australia, for example, is the amount of participants. So it's a lot easier for one or two companies to control their production and understand what that will have as an impact on price than a country where you've got thousands of mining licenses and everyone trying to go, well, the price is good today, I'm gonna dig a bit more, and everyone gets that same price signal, everyone does the same thing, you end up with a lot more coal than maybe you need. You go, I could do an extra cargo, everyone does an extra cargo, that's a lot of extra cargoes. So from my point of view, the whole thing's quite simplistic, that it's all about supply and demand and how much you're providing for any market that demands that material. One of the things we've done, and James has been instrumental in getting this into our analytics, is that we stopped looking at the market as there's this many million tons in the global market. It's all about the different grades, what the demand is for those different grades, and who's producing those different grades. And then you have, within the big market, you have many smaller markets. I do think it is the responsibility of those that are producing to understand the wider market than just their own conditions, their own supply and demand, to understand that every decision they make has a implication to the wider market. That's where I think Indonesia is very much unique, considering its scale in the thermal overall seaborne market. The amount of participants makes it a lot easier to over and potentially underproduce if there is some limiting factors. So yeah, from my point of view, I think there's great things about Indonesian coal. It fulfills a lot of roles that the market needs. It's very close to a lot of its demand centers. There's a lot going for Indonesian coal. It's got a lot going for it. It provides the right material to the right people at the right time. So it's all very good, but there is that possibility for it to overproduce because not everyone is seeing, or everyone's seeing the same price signal and does the same thing.
Yeah, I think Scott makes excellent comments, and the only thing I'd add on the price side is the reason that we have M42 getting back into the mid 30s is that current price is not sustainable. And equivalent levels for all of the other Indonesian prices. On the things like carbon, I think as an analyst, one of the hardest challenges is predicting regulation. And I think China's comments about being carbon neutral by 2060 really, I think, surprised a lot of people. And that's something that will hurt coal demand in the long term. And so, predicting that is a challenge, but we do incorporate, tighter carbon regulations and that kind of thing in our long-term outlooks for sure.
Okay, so thank you very much, James and Scott. Pak Irwandi, Prof. Irwandi, apakah sudah siap untuk menjawab pertanyaan? Oke, karena masih muted posisinya, Pak Hendra, apakah juga bersedia untuk mendahului? Jadi terlebih dahulu Pak Hendra mewakili teman-teman perusahaan tambang batubara bisa menjawab pertanyaannya.
Iya, mohon izin Pak Irwandi nih, karena belum on ya saya ini. Oke, tadi ada 2 pertanyaan yang related, saya langsung jawab bersamaannya. Jadi ya tentu statement dari Bapak Presiden kemarin ini satu yang benar-benar sangat luar biasa. Ini menunjukkan perhatian dari pemimpin negara terhadap industri pertambangan batubara. Dan memang apa yang disampaikan Presiden ini mencerminkan arah pembangunan transformasi kita ke depan. Dan Pak Presiden juga di beberapa kesempatan mengemukakan dalam pergaulan pertemuan dengan beberapa pemimpin dunia, tentu Indonesia sebagai negara eksportir batubara thermal terbesar di dunia mendapat sorotan tentunya ya, apalagi di tengah tingginya perhatian dunia terhadap upaya untuk mengurangi emisi karbon ya, sebagai implementasi dari perjanjian Prancis dan perjanjian Paris, dan itu disampaikan Bapak Presiden mengenai banyaknya permintaan dari beberapa pemimpin negara agar Indonesia sudah mulai bertransformasi. Dan tentu Pak Presiden juga memahami bahwa Indonesia memiliki kekayaan alam, sumber daya alam, yaitu batu bara sebagai modal pembangunan. Nah, apa yang disampaikan oleh Pak Jokowi kemarin ini saya sebut sebagai wake up call ya. Wake up call bagi pelaku usaha untuk mulai mencoba mengeksplor opportunity untuk bisa invest di nilai tambah batubara ya, gimana ke depannya. Dan bagi pemerintah tentu ini wake up call juga agar segera membenahi perangkat regulasi, jaminan insentif, fiskal dan non-fiskal agar hilirisasi atau pengembangan batubara, nilai tambah batubara ini bisa terlaksana. Nah, dalam rangka itu tentunya yang saya sampaikan tadi perlu dibuat satu peta jalan roadmap yang komprehensif ya, yang mempertimbangkan seluruh aspek, yang termasuk yang paling penting adalah bagaimana mengenai outlook ekspor ke depan. Tadi disampaikan oleh James tadi ya, Scott mengenai beberapa faktor yang bisa mempengaruhi potensi demand batu bara ke depannya, seperti statement dari Presiden Xi Jinping bahwa China di 2060 akan coba mengurangi carbon intensity, dan juga ada implikasi dari Paris Agreement. Nah, ini perlu benar-benar dicermati, dihitung sampai sejauh mana kita bisa memanfaatkan ekspor tersebut untuk modal pembangunan. Tapi di sisi lain juga bagaimana kita bisa mendorong hilirisasi batu bara itu bisa berjalan, ya, bisa the balance, tapi tentunya dari sisi perusahaan juga bisa mendapatkan margin, ya, sebagai pelaku usaha, jadi tidak merugikan perusahaan. Nah, ini yang memang membutuhkan insentif yang tidak sedikit, ya. Tadi saya sampaikan, kita berterima kasih sudah ada Undang-Undang Minerba dan juga tarif royalti khusus, ya, tapi tentu ini masih membutuhkan support insentif yang lain. Memang ini banyak sekali tugas PR berat dari semua jajaran pemerintahan dan juga industri, akan siap support tentunya, karena bagaimanapun juga batu bara sebagai non-renewable suatu saat akan habis, ya. Jadi tentu ini adalah saatnya untuk kita pelan-pelan bertransformasi, tapi tentu dengan mempertimbangkan karakteristik keunggulan kita sendiri dan juga dengan cara kita, dengan berbagai faktor yang harus diperhitungkan termasuk penerimaan negara dan lain-lain. Mungkin itu dari saya.
Baik, terima kasih Pak Hendra untuk jawabannya. Kita masuk ke Q&A sesi kedua. Pertama mungkin mohon maaf karena Prof. Irwandi kemungkinan besar lagi rapat dengan beberapa menteri. Jadi untuk pertanyaan yang ditujukan ke beliau mungkin kita akan skip, tapi nanti kita akan lanjutkan ke beliau. Nanti jawabannya kita coba kirim ke teman-teman di Pamerindo untuk di forward by email ke teman-teman.
Tapi sepertinya pertanyaan ini memang juga relevan kalau dijawab dari asosiasi, juga dari market analyst, ya, tentang rencana transisi energi di sektor pertambangan. Jadi pengaruh bagaimana, ya tadi Pak Hendra sudah sedikit menyebutkan bahwa bagaimana pengaruh energi bersih itu akan kemudian berpengaruh pada pasar batu bara. To Scott and James, here the question is about the energy transition and how the clean energy will also affect the coal market in the future. And also with the recent US election polls, result, with Joe Biden winning the American election, there's probably a shift in American policy on clean energy. So how is that going to affect the market? And especially here in Indonesia, you can have your comments on that. Please, Pak Hendra first.
Ya, oke. Mungkin masih ada korelasi dengan apa yang saya sampaikan tadi, ya. Karena hilirisasi batu bara tentu ini ada korelasinya juga dengan upaya kita untuk bisa memenuhi komitmen terhadap Paris Agreement tadi, ya. Indonesia sebagai negara yang meratifikasi Paris Agreement, di situ ada nationally determined contributions, ada komitmen negara untuk memenuhi tersebut, dan batubara tentu bagian dari itu. Jadi ini merupakan salah satu upaya untuk menuju ke arah transisi energi. Nah, transisi energi yang tadi saya maksud tentu adalah transisi energi yang mempertimbangkan keunggulan kita, ya, yang saat ini masih bergantung terhadap energi fosil, khususnya batu bara. Nah, ini bagaimana kita bisa taking advantage dari kekayaan kita, tapi perlahan-lahan akan shifting ke arah transisi energi. Nah, untuk yang paling pragmatis saat ini tentu kita lihat perusahaan-perusahaan pertambangan batu bara, anggota-anggota PPI juga tentu sudah mempertimbangkan bagaimana mengurangi ketergantungan terhadap atau mengurangi carbon intensity di kegiatan penambangan, ya. Kita lihat sekarang kita sudah mulai beralih menggunakan biodiesel, ya, biofuel, ya. Tadi B20, sekarang B30, dan kabarnya akan terus meningkat sampai B100. Nah, ini kan salah satu kontribusi yang cukup penting, ya, untuk mengurangi juga carbon intensity secara praktikal. Kemudian upaya-upaya efisiensi dalam kegiatan penambangan tentu ini akan semakin efisien satu kegiatan penambangan tentu akan mengurangi penggunaan bahan bakar ya. Jadi ini dengan otomatisasi, digitalisasi ini di lapangan tentu sangat berpengaruh. Kemudian penggunaan beberapa sumber energi terbarukan di operasional pertambangan sudah mulai tumbuh ya, penggunaan solar PV misalnya di beberapa lahan reklamasi, kemudian beberapa perusahaan pertambangan seperti PTBA juga ya sudah mulai masuk ke energi terbarukan, dan beberapa perusahaan anggota lainnya seperti Adaro ya, ITM dan lain-lain sudah mulai beralih ke sana. Jadi trennya sekarang sudah mulai, dan tentu tidak bisa dilepaskan upaya-upaya keberhasilan dari beberapa upaya reklamasi, karena reklamasi ini juga sangat penting untuk berkontribusi mengurangi carbon intensity. Jadi hal-hal pragmatis sekarang sedang berlangsung, dan tentunya kalau transisi energi secara ini kita akan bekerja sama dengan pemerintah mencari solusi yang terbaik. Terima kasih.
Okay, Scott and James, please, you can have short comments about the energy, the clean energy, and the recent market, coal market, please.
Yeah, no, look, I can definitely chat about both. I think, look, clean energy is coming, and it's naive to think otherwise. And there's a lot of investment. There's been a lot of investment, and we've seen coal demand cratering in both North America and in Europe, and that will continue. And I think President Xi's comment about carbon neutrality, like I said, sort of came out of left field. One of the interesting, I'll just throw out a few nuggets because it's obviously a huge topic. Our China team is of the view that, of course, this will hurt coal demand in the long term, but there's no way that China can achieve being carbon neutral without heavy emphasis on abatement. So including carbon capture and sequestration, and including offsets like plantations or algal farms, and this, ways to get carbon out of the atmosphere. So there will be a push for clean technologies, and I think it'll be very interesting to see coal's role in that. But our team's early read is that we will need coal in the long term in China. We'll just need to have a way to offset that carbon. With regard to Biden, I don't think there'll be big changes. Frankly, I don't. I think Trump had a lot of rhetoric about helping coal and really didn't. And I think most of the sort of impacts from the Clean Air Act that had come in primarily during the Obama years, few of those were really unwound. I think we will get a greener Environmental Protection Agency in the US, and that will certainly impact domestic coal, but domestic coal is dying so quickly in the US anyway. So, and the US, I think, is going to have a relatively small role as an exporter, certainly for thermal coal anyway. So I don't think the impact of the election is huge on the global coal markets.
Okay, thank you Scott and James. Nah, Prof. Irwandi, tadi ada satu pertanyaan untuk Prof. Terkait dengan transisi energi menuju ke energi bersih. Nah, bagaimana kira-kira industri batubara menyikapi hal ini?
Terima kasih Pak Megan ya. Sekarang ini ada satu tim yang dibentuk oleh Menteri di Kementerian SDM untuk membuat grand strategi energi Indonesia, dan akan bekerja maksimum 1 bulan, sudah harus keluar. Nah, jadi perkembangan energi terbarukan itu akan memberikan warna tersendiri di dalam grand strategi ini. Tetapi batu bara bagaimanapun juga dalam sampai kira-kira 20-30 tahun itu masih memegang persentase yang cukup besar. Ya, karena sampai sekarang ini mungkin sampai 25%, sekarang ini kan masih di atas 50%. Dan tentunya dengan tekanan-tekanan lingkungan, tekanan iklim, dan lain-lain, ya tekanan finansial, ini akan berkurang. Ya. tetapi tidak bisa tiba-tiba. Namun demikian, energi baru terbarukan juga sedang didorong pertumbuhannya. Saya kira demikian, Pak.
Baik, terima kasih Prof. Irwandi dan para pembicara sekalian, para peserta webinar Mining Talk di sore hari ini. Akhirnya kita sampai di penghujung acara. Terima kasih banyak kepada para pembicara, Prof. Irwandi, Pak Hendra, James, dan Scott. Terima kasih banyak sekali lagi dan sampai kita ketemu di Mining Talk atau Mining Energy and webinar yang lainnya.
So thank you our panelists, Professor Irwandi, Pak Hendra, also James and Scott, and also Pak Merindo for holding this discussion. And we also thank you our viewers, hoping you have a good discussion, and would like to say farewell to you guys. Have a good evening.
Iya, kita kembalikan ke MC. Terima kasih, Prof.
Thank you very much.
Terima kasih.
Terima kasih.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Baik, sekali lagi terima kasih kepada Bapak Egen dan juga Ibu Esti sudah meluangkan waktunya untuk menjadi moderator kami pada hari ini. Boleh tepuk tangan yang meriah untuk moderator kita. Tidak lupa juga kami sekali lagi ucapkan terima kasih kepada para pembicara, Profesor Dr. Insinyur Irwandi Arif MSc, juga Bapak Hendra Sinadia, and also Mr. Scott Dendi, and also Mr. James Stevenson, serta Bapak Agustinus Tan yang telah memberikan presentasi yang sangat luar biasa kepada kami semua.
Pak Agustinus seperti sudah disampaikan,
Oh ya,
beliau izin karena memang beliau sakit mendadak, jadi tidak ada hari ini.
Siap, terima kasih. Sebelum kita menutup acara pada sore hari ini, para peserta webinar silakan untuk mengisi polling yang akan segera ditampilkan. Silakan untuk diisi dengan isu yang akan ditampilkan dan nanti akan kita segera recap untuk hasil dari pollingnya hari ini. Baik, mohon maaf ternyata pollingnya tidak dilakukan. Jadi atas nama Majalah Tambang dan Pamerindo Indonesia, kami mengucapkan apresiasi dan terima kasih kepada seluruh tenaga kesehatan, baik dokter, perawat, manajemen fasilitas kesehatan, yang berperan utama sebagai garda terdepan penanganan COVID-19 di seluruh Indonesia bahkan dunia. Kami juga berterima kasih dan terus mengajak semua pihak untuk selalu menjaga lingkungan dan selalu bersama-sama menjaga diri dan orang lain untuk tetap aman, bersih, dan sehat untuk mencegah dan memutus penyebaran virus yang berbahaya ini. Bagi Bapak Ibu sekalian yang ingin menonton ulang webinar, materi webinar dan rekaman akan kami kirimkan melalui email ajeng@pamerindo.com. Akhir kata, saya David Rindo, Majalah Tambang dan Pamerindo Indonesia, mohon undur diri kiranya webinar ini dapat bermanfaat bagi yang menyaksikan. Terima kasih dan wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Terima kasih banyak.
Terima kasih semua Pak Irwandi.
Ya.
Tambang. Sorry saya lupa screen-nya karena habis seminar atau seminar yang lain. Sorry.
Nice.
Okay. Scott and James.
Scott and James, thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Later in other occasions.
Yes.
Yeah.
See you next time. Yeah.
Okay.
Terima kasih semuanya.
Pak Irwandi Arif ya. Makasih banyak Pak Merindo Majalah Tambang.
Bye bye.
Makasih bos.
Bye. Yo, thank you ya. Mohon izin live ya.
Ya.
Okay.
Thank you. Makasih.
Mohon izin live.
Ya, makasih Prof.
Ya, Bu Esti juga makasih.
Makasih Bu Esti.
Ya, ingat Profesor.
Iya Bu Esti ya. Iya udah lama nggak ketemu Bu Esti ya.
Iya. Kalau Pak Hendra nggak boleh lupa.
Oh iya nggak boleh lupa nih salah. Ini
sama.
bingung nanti istri saya kalau dengar ada Esti lain ya. Oke ya. Thank you ya.
Makasih.
Bye ya. Sukses selalu.
Bye.
Sehat.
Thanks.
Ih, nggak boleh.